It was supposed to be a 5-minute hearing, the kind nobody remembers by lunchtime. I know that because the man on the bench kept checking his watch like I was an inconvenience, not a human being. He didn't even look at me when I stepped into the courtroom, didn't lift his head when I cleared my throat. He just sighed loud enough for everyone to hear, like the room itself had disappointed him. And yeah, I noticed the smiles in the gallery when I spoke. The way people lean back when they think they've already figured you out. You know that look, like, oh, this is going to be easy. My name is Daniel Brooks. At least that's what the court file said that morning. 63 years old black property owner representing myself. I wore a suit that had seen better decades, shoes polished thin, a briefcase with more scratches than shine. And when I opened my mouth, my accent came out before my words did. Not thick enough to be foreign, not clean enough to be ignored. The kind that makes people listen for mistakes instead of meaning. The judge that day was Richard Halverson, big name locally. Everybody knew he was eyeing a federal appointment. Everybody knew he liked things fast, clean, quiet. And I was none of those things. So, Mr. Brooks, he said, finally looking up, eyebrow raised, you're here regarding a zoning violation on Pine Hollow Road. Unsafe structure, improper usage. How do you plead? I tried to explain. I really did. I talked about inspections, about permits, about how the city inspector signed off last year. My words came out slow, careful, my accent stretching the syllables like they needed room to breathe. I could feel the tension growing. I could feel him losing patience. He cut me off with a wave of his hand. Sir, this is not story hour. I need yes or no. Guilty or not guilty. I said not guilty, but I also mentioned a prior ruling, something about grandfathered usage. That's when he laughed. Not a chuckle. A laugh. Sharp dismissive. The kind that tells everyone else it's safe to laugh too. Are you trying to quote case law? He said, smirking. Because I can barely understand you as it is. The room reacted exactly the way you'd expect. A few snorts. Someone coughed to hide a laugh. And there it was, that old familiar heat in my chest. The one that says you can swallow this or you can stand up. Halvorsen leaned forward. Bailiff, do we have an interpreter? Because I'm not wasting court time guessing what this man is trying to say. I told him I didn't need one. I told him I understood perfectly. He ignored me. He always did. 20 minutes later, the interpreter walked in. Young woman, sharp eyes, confident stride. Her name was Emily Carter. She looked at me, then at the judge, then back at me. She asked what language I spoke. Halverson waved her off. Whatever this is, he said like my voice was an object on the floor. Emily stepped closer. I tapped my briefcase once, twice, a habit I've had since law school. She froze. Her eyes dropped to my hand, to the iron ring on my finger. And just like that, I knew she recognized me. She turned to the judge and said quietly, Your Honor, I don't believe an interpreter is necessary. Halverson snapped, I decide what's necessary in my courtroom. That's when I straightened up, set the briefcase down, took off my glasses. And when I spoke again, I didn't hide anything. Emily's right, Richard, I said. And the accent was gone, not softened. Gone. My English is fine. You could feel the shift, like the room leaned forward all at once. I cited the case I'd mentioned earlier, word for word, corrected his summary of the statute, even referenced the amendment passed 3 years prior. I watched his face change color as the realization hit him. Who are you? He asked, voice suddenly small. I smiled. Not a friendly smile. Daniel Brooks. Founding partner at Brooks, Keller & Ames. You might remember the firm. We argued the Zoning Reform Act you're currently misapplying. Silence. Heavy, uncomfortable silence. He tried to apologize, stumbled through words about misunderstanding, about procedure. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I told him why I'd spoken the way I did. Because my father spoke that way. Because men like Halverson dismissed him his entire life. Because I wanted to see how the system treated someone it thought was small. And it treated him exactly how I remembered. The case fell apart after that. Missing evidence, ignored reports, a clear violation of disclosure rules. Halverson recused himself before I even asked. Cameras were already out by the time I left the building. What people didn't know yet was that Pine Hollow Road wasn't random. The property had been targeted. Developers wanted it. And Halverson had been quietly ruling against owners in that area for years, forcing cheap sales. I wasn't there for revenge. I was there for confirmation. Within weeks, the investigation went public. His appointment vanished. So did his friends. And when the financial records surfaced, the story got ugly fast. At sentencing, I spoke again. Not about him, but about the house. About my father fixing radios in the basement so neighbors could afford heat. About voices the law never listened to. I announced the creation of the Harbor Justice Center built on that same block. Free legal aid. No suits required. Accents welcome. Halverson got 12 years. Some people said it was too harsh. Others said it wasn't enough. That's where the arguments started. Years later, I visited the center. Kids playing in the waiting area, lawyers listening, really listening. And I heard someone speaking slowly, carefully afraid of being misunderstood. Nobody laughed. Nobody rushed them. So here's my question. Was justice served when Halverson lost everything, or when someone like him finally learned what it feels like to not be heard? Where do you draw that line? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Argue it out. Tell me if you've ever been judged by your voice, your clothes, your background. Because the truth is, the law doesn't just test guilt or innocence. It tests who we think deserves respect.